Hey, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today. We're going to wait just a few minutes for others to join us, and then we'll begin today's discussion. Okay, I think we're ready to begin today's webinar, and I see how there's so many people funneling in. This chat is very active. So we're ready to begin today's webinar, the Teacher Residency Return on Investment, a pathway that prepares effective and diverse teachers who stay. My name is Jessica Au, and I'm a Senior Policy Analyst at the Hunt Institute. Again, thank you all for tuning in for our latest installment of Homeroom with Education Leaders. Today's webinar is organized in partnership with the National Center for Teacher Residencies to discuss how we can leverage teacher residencies to prepare and retain effective and diverse teachers. I'd also like to thank our wonderful panelists today. We know you're all incredibly busy, and we really appreciate you taking the time to have these important conversations with us. So to provide an overview of our hour together, we're going to start with a 30-minute moderated discussion with our distinguished panelists, and then we'll pivot to a Q&A with the audience. And so if you have any questions throughout the discussion, please feel free to submit them using the Q&A feature on the bottom of your screen, and we'll do our best to address them during the discussion. And so now I'd like to introduce our moderator, Dakari Ahrens, Director of Education Policy and Partnerships at the Chan Zuckerberg Initiative. Dakari, thank you so much for offering your time today to facilitate such an important conversation.
Thank you, Jessica, and good afternoon, everyone. As she mentioned, I'm Dakari Ahrens. I'm Director of Education Policy and Partnerships at the Chan Zuckerberg Initiative, and I'm really excited to join the Hunt Institute and the National Center for Teacher Residencies for this important conversation this afternoon about teacher residencies and the pathway that they can provide for us getting not only more effective teachers in classrooms, but a diverse group of teachers who stay. We all know that the pandemic has had a lot of impacts on education, and one of them that we are continuing to see is more shortages of educators around the country as we look to meet this challenge. As we move forward, we want both short and long-term strategies that help us think about creating the diverse workforce that we need for our students. This is really important for us also at the Chan Zuckerberg Initiative, where we understand that a diverse teacher workforce not only fosters affirming spaces for students of color, but helps prepare all students to thrive in what is exponentially a multicultural world. Today, we are joined by a group of amazing leaders who are going to talk to us about this growing body of evidence that points to teacher residencies as a really effective preparation model, which allows individuals to spend a year in the classroom learning from mentor teachers and completing some research-based and clinically aligned coursework. So thank you for joining us this afternoon. Our panelists all come with great expertise, and I'm excited to tell you a little bit about each of them before we jump in. So we are joined by Dr. Carrie Wright, who is the State Superintendent of Education in Mississippi, Dr. Susan Bunting, who is the former State Secretary of Education in Delaware, Dr. Tabitha Grossman, who's the Chief External Relations Officer for the National Center for Teacher Residencies, and Zakia Boyd, who is an educator at Wright Middle School in Nashville and a graduate herself of the Nashville Teacher Residency. Dr. Grossman, we're going to start with you. Now, the National Center for Teacher Residency actively develops and supports teacher residency programs across the country. And I know recently you all published a report that got into the impact of teacher residencies. Could you tell our audience a little bit more about what teacher residencies are and what you discovered in your report about why this unique model is so effective in helping us grow the next generation of educators?
Thanks, Dakari. I'd be happy to do that. One of the things that really makes teacher residencies unique is the focus on candidates of color. So NCTR as an organization has an organizational mission and vision focused on supporting candidates of color in the residency model. Another thing that makes them unique is the focus on their day one readiness and the fact that retention rates are higher for teachers who are prepared via this route. Let me unpack that just a bit and talk a bit more about what we do and how residencies are a really unique way to prepare teachers. We currently support 44 teacher residency programs in a network, and the network essentially functions as a professional learning community. And those residency programs are all focused on a partnership between a school district, and in some instances, more than one school district, sometimes a charter school, as well as an institution of higher education. And these partners, they collaborate to develop and implement a clinically rich teacher preparation pathway that recruits, prepares, and retains teachers of color. The clinically rich 1 year commitment on the part of the resident to teach alongside a trained mentor is a key feature of the residency programs that we support. And I would just like to point out, as we talk about the fact that teacher residencies place such an emphasis on candidates of color, that 62% of the residents in our network residencies identify as a person of color. I mentioned this already, but we pair the resident with a strategically recruited, trained, and supported mentor for a full year. And those residents are supported to ensure that on day one, they're ready to be an effective teacher. The mentors, as I mentioned, are strategically recruited, meaning that they are effective teachers. And 42% of the mentors in our network also identify as people of color. Once residency candidates complete their program, they typically work in Title I schools. In fact, 87% of our network residency graduates are hired to work in the school where they completed their residency training. And very importantly, and I'm sure this will resonate with everyone listening to this webinar today, 85% of residency graduates are still teaching 3 years after they enter the profession. The retention rate of residencies is really one of the key features of a residency program. And it is a strategic way, as we feature, in the report that you mentioned, for school districts to build pipelines of teachers.
Thank you so much for that. And we're also joined here today by two state leaders who have implemented this in their states. Dr. Wright, if you could just tell us a little bit. I know that in Mississippi, you adopted the teacher residency program in 2019, and I think you are soon admitting your 4th cohort of the program. Can you tell us a little bit about the motivation for taking on teacher residencies in Mississippi and what your vision is for teacher prep going forward?
Sure, thank you, and thank you for having me. Well, like all states, in the nation, we're facing a teacher shortage, and we really felt that the teacher residency program was a key strategy for us. We have a goal in our strategic plan that ensures that all districts and all schools will have effective teachers and leaders, and so this was a good way for us to enter into this fray. We also know that the finances of paying for this for some students is quite large, and so we wanted to eliminate that barrier. And so our funding provided us for tuition, for the mentor stipends, for books, testing fees, et cetera. So we really took the financial barrier away from the students that wanted to apply. We also know that teacher retention is huge because nationally, we're hearing 50% of teachers are leaving within the first 5 years. So we wanted them to feel supported and, as was just said, ready day one to start working. And so we want to make sure that we're giving them, our residents are getting twice the amount of clinical experience that they normally would have gotten, and supported in both small and large group settings, and by not only mentor teachers, but by district leaders, by other teachers in the building, university coordinators, and by our own department staff. We also know that diversity is a huge issue in our teacher shortage area and is part of our challenge. So we really focused in on our selection process to really assist people of color, men, military families. So we wanted to try and get at those areas that we know are difficult to recruit. So we've had a lot of success, and that's the good news, because this is kind of a fledgling operation, as you know, since 2019. But 70% of our residents in our residency program identify as persons of color. We've got a 91% retention rate in cohorts 1 through 3, and an 82% graduation rate in cohort 3 as of December. And 80% of our mentors are reporting that they feel that their residents are day one ready when they leave the program. So for the beginning of a program, I feel that we're off to the right step.
That's some amazing data, Dr. Wright. It sounds like we're on the path to building a really durable and continuing set of educators who are going to have an impact in Mississippi for a long time to come.
That is our plan, and that is our hope.
Absolutely. And Dr. Bunting, I know that Delaware has also been a leader in promoting and investing in teacher residency programs. As you look back on your tenure as Secretary of Education, how has that model impacted the teacher workforce in Delaware? And what challenges did you face in trying to get this sort of systems level change in teacher preparation ushered into the state?
Thank you again for having me as well. And I could say ditto to whatever has already been said, except that Delaware started a little bit earlier. We were, before I was Secretary of Education, actually, as a superintendent, we had the opportunity to pair with Wilmington University and venture into something that was totally new. A bit of a risk taker or a guinea pig. As a superintendent, I jumped on board, and we quickly recognized the value of the investment from the very, very beginning. So I had been a strong supporter of such programs even before I became Secretary of Education, and was very pleased to know when I went to the department that there was interest in building residency programs throughout the state. So in Delaware, our year-long residency program is really designed to establish and leverage partnerships between the local education agencies and the educator prep programs. In Delaware, we're small, we're a relationship state, and so we're able to implement robust, comprehensive year-long experiences for our teachers. And we have a philosophy of trying to grow more of our own. So we have taken this away from just a partnership that's between an individual district and made it a statewide program. We're very pleased about that. And we're pleased also that it's been successful enough because we've had some growing experiences, and we have the evidence that it works, that we have been able to convince our legislators to back this. Starting in 2019-20, we were able to get the legislature, this doesn't sound a lot for big states, but in Delaware, it's a lot of money, to put $1 million annually into funding our residency programs. We have very strong residency programs with both Relay and with Wilmington University. They have to apply, though, to make sure that their programs are up to date and they're very, very high quality. In this fiscal year, we're waiting for our Joint Finance Committee now to add another $1 million to that so that we can give stipends. As Carrie said, sometimes it's a barrier for people, particularly to think of a whole year without any kind of income. This was a barrier previously before our legislature got involved. Thank you, Tabitha, because when we started this program, you helped us draft that first FRA. And we were able to provide for a number of residents. So totally, we started back in that first year with funding for 53 people to come through our program. Again, numbers are smaller in a small state, but we have a total this year of 109. and we have carry the same types of results. I talked to one of the very early adopters of the program yesterday, who told me that of the 40 student teachers who have come through the program, 3 dropped out because of the quality of the program. It was soon recognized they were not made for teaching, but the others are all still teaching. And most of them, all except 3, are teaching in the original district. So there's something that really happens. There's a quality experience when these folks finish the year. They've been there from the beginning of the year to the very end of the year. They know all the parts of the system. They've built a community relationship as well as a district relationship and a school relationship. They're very confident. They have classroom management tied up. They are really ready to dwell on the academics. And we're able, through our partnerships with Relay and Wilmington University, to place our teachers in high need schools, which is very important to us in Delaware. We're very concerned about the achievement and want all of our students to benefit. Our numbers are not as great as we'd like to have them, but they're growing steadily as far as our diversity in our classrooms. But we are dwelling on placing our residents in schools where we really need to attract teachers who can make a difference in student achievement, and that they will stay there because of the relationship that has been built with the school itself, the team, and the residents. So we are seeing a tremendous impact in Delaware. We're very excited about the program, and we will continue to back it and see it grow.
It sounds really exciting. I wonder if you and Dr. Wright could also just for a moment tell us a little bit about the background of the typical candidate who might come through a teacher residency program, and just maybe say another sentence more about how you've thought about stipends and other ways to compensate folks as they go through this year-long journey.
Carrie, I'll jump on it for a second. We recognized before the recent across the country recognition of teacher shortage, and that's why we began early to look at how we grow our own. So in many cases, we're looking at our actual, some of our staff members, particularly paraprofessionals who have been with us for a while. We are able to work with our teachers of color or paraprofessionals of color, our prospective teachers, and bring them into programs where they would be able to finish. They've already shown their great interest and their talents in working with students. So that's one way. We also have teacher academies in Delaware in most of our high schools. And we're really excited about fostering that devotion, that dedication, that interest, that determination to make a difference in students' lives. And so we're mentoring those students in the teacher academies to keep on in our programs. And the fact that we then can guide them and bring them back in as seniors to do an entire year with us is really important. So it's a very strong part of our Grow Your Own program.
I'll say absolutely everything that Susan said is so true. We first look to our staffs because there are a lot of folks that would love to be teachers, but for whatever reason did not complete a degree, et cetera. We also did more of a advertising campaign, if you will. So we put the word out there because we knew there were probably other people out that may not be in our schools that had 2 years under their belt and wanted to participate in this program. But we also were very strategic in where we started the programs, and we started with Kellogg Foundation money. We did not have additional money. So the Kellogg Foundation was kind enough for us to start our first 3 cohorts. And I'm going to talk a little bit about our funding for the next round. But we were able to, within cohorts 1 through 3, come up with about 71 people. And so that was, we felt was a good start, for us. But I think that we've not limited it to just the schoolhouse because we've tried to make sure that everybody across the state is aware of this and knows how to access the program.
You asked about challenges. We've mentioned the financial part of it, and now we are able to offer, particularly those student teachers that are our residents in high need schools, we're able to offer them $25,000 to get them through the year, which we're very pleased about. But we have to make sure that we have, first of all, a very strong program coming from our universities. Our higher ed partners are very good at developing with us high quality programs, and will often come and teach our residents right in the school where we have placed a cohort, so that they're getting their classwork as well as their experience in schools at the same time. But a real key to this program is the quality of the mentoring teacher. It's not something that you can just sign up for because you want an extra pair of hands and a body in your classroom. We need the best of our teachers to be guiding our residents through a very, very productive and influential year. If they have that solid year tucked under their belts, as I said, they're ready to stay for a long time. So the quality of the teachers involved and the experience, the coaching that they get as the coaches of our residents is extremely important.
Absolutely. And speaking of the best and brightest, I would love to bring in Zakia Boyd, who has been through one of these residency programs and is a classroom educator. Thank you for joining us this afternoon.
Thank you so much for having me.
Absolutely. I would love for you to tell us about how the program supported your teaching journey and helped prepare you for the workforce, and what elements of that have encouraged you to continue to stay in the classroom.
Yeah, so many, especially individuals within my cohort when I was in the residency, they came from all sorts of career paths. I was one of those who was in-house, so I was already in my district, just and more so an assistant position. My bachelor's was in child and family development, in which it wasn't certificated. I was in many ways able to work with children from infant to school age, but again, non-certificated. So because I was in-house, I was presented with that opportunity to be a part of Nashville Teacher Residency here in Nashville, Tennessee. So immediately, you know, after school, after working in the district for a while, life circumstances may come up. So it honestly came at the perfect time, because at that time, you know, traditional higher education wasn't working, you know, with my schedule and with my family needs. So as soon as I got the opportunity to jump on it, I joined the program. And I quickly learned that NTR particularly not only aim towards, you know, content and of course getting certificated, passing your praxis, but there was a large portion of consistent practice and feedback between the resident and the mentor teacher. So, you know, instead of sitting, learning the content and the coursework, it was practice, it was feedback for the entire school year. You are up, or I was up teaching. As soon as that class, that 60 minutes was done, we were in the back of the classroom gaining feedback from the mentor teacher, taking notes, and then putting those notes right back into practice for the next class period. So the practice and feedback element of teacher residencies helped me tremendously for those. I am one learner who needs to be hands-on and visual. So that was an amazing opportunity. Also, I can say that within the program, there is a large space for affinity groups to speak on any sort of cultural biases that they may not, or unconscious biases that they may bring into the classroom. So it gave you plenty of open space to learn and speak and become that culturally responsive educator when it was your time to get in the classroom. So again, to answer your question, my journey started and it is continuously going as I now teach 8th grade English language arts. Again, here in Nashville, Tennessee at Wright Middle School. I will say that I heard, I think Dr. Bunting and a couple others giving those examples of incentives to actually start the program, which was a major help for, where there was scholarships for those individuals or BIPOC people, people of color, and just that strong support system that guided you through the entire year. So again, it's been an amazing ride as far as retention. I am one to stay and will stay and is here. So again, I am grateful for Nashville Teacher Residency, the Hunt Institute, and those working to bring in individuals from the community who reflect these students that we see every day, to allow them the opportunity to know that, oh, she looks like me. She also speaks the same language as me. So at this point, I feel like I can do anything. So just having that is a wonderful bonus for incorporating these residency programs throughout the country.
Thank you for sharing that powerful experience that you've had, and also the impact that you're starting to see it have on your students in the classroom. A question for all of you, given what we've heard about the successful implementation across these 3 states, is what else do we think might be needed to encourage more states and more districts to go down this path of pursuing teacher residencies as a strategy for growing the next generation of educators?
Well, I think part of it, I think there's 2 parts to this. I think part of it is also changing the narrative, because I think that too often teacher residencies, you hear people say, well, that's just lowering the bar, or that's a shorter program, and how can it be, as good? But I think that we have to start talking about it differently than that. I also think that, we keep talking about it as a pipeline, and we've changed the narrative here just a little bit, to be honest with you, in Mississippi. We're not talking about it as a pipeline, because with a pipeline, there's usually one way in, one way out, and sometimes pipes leak. So what we're trying to use the narrative is looking at it as a great human capital highway, so that there's really strong on-ramps and off-ramps, but they're supporting our educators from recruitment to retirement. And I think that we've also got to make sure that we are very much focused on, as just Zakia so beautifully said, making sure that we've got people in front of the classroom that reflect the people that are sitting in those desks in the classroom. And I think also we've been able to work with our districts, our educator prep programs, our legislators. We're lifting this up in a way we've not been as fortunate to be able to pay our residents, for that, but we certainly are paying our mentors for that. But the one thing is, we have an unprecedented opportunity right now that we've taken advantage of. We've got areas of our state that were really devastated by COVID. And typically those are the rural areas of our state where most of our children of color reside. And so we took a look at that, and we took a look at the new ESSER dollars that have come in, and we married the 2. And so now we just put out a $9.8 million contract with 5 universities to bring on, over the next cohort, another 200 residents that we're going to be able to pay for with our ESSER money. So this is a great opportunity for states, when you're sitting on this kind of money, to really put it to good use to bring in more teachers that we need for the children who need them the most.
Carrie, a very wise investment of that money, and we're looking at expanding our dollars that way too. But I'd like to play up on a conversation that Zakia, a point that she made about not only looking like the children in the classroom, but speaking the same language. And I know that could be a variety of languages, but in Delaware, we've had a tremendous growth of our English learner population. And we're able to work with our universities and put whole cohorts of teachers in our neediest schools, as I mentioned, but not just needy as far as economics, but needy as far as language goes. So we're able to acclimate them to a school or a district that is changing very rapidly as far as the languages that need to be spoken, and that heart for other languages. And I would also add that seeing is believing. I think that you had your front runners who were out there giving this residency idea and concept a try, and it has worked. And through conferences and meetings and so forth, we're able to get the word out that this is just a very, very wise investment in the future of our schools.
Dakari, I think Dr. Bunting points to something that I think really gets at the heart of your question, which is awareness. There are a lot of policymakers who are aware of this model, particularly in terms of how the model addresses issues every school district in this country is facing around retention and recruitment and support, particularly for teachers of color. But because residents spend an entire school year in a school working alongside a mentor, they really understand what teaching looks like in a particular school community. And that's a very powerful lever. It's one of the reasons why 93% of the principals in schools that are in our network indicate that their residents are better prepared than their peers trained by other pathways. The awareness around the very things that Dr. Bunting is talking about, how well the model works, I think is the key to getting more states on board. I think another key is understanding how to finance the model. We've talked a lot about the stipends that residents get paid. And that cost sometimes is difficult for policymakers to wrap their minds around. But when you talk about it in the context of, for example, the cost of replacing a teacher lost to turnover, which is at least $20,000, it makes it a slightly different conversation. And really the publication that Jessica alluded to at the top of the webinar really digs into that. For example, we did an analysis in Chicago public schools and found that $85 million are spent annually to replace and hire teachers. While some teacher turnover is not bad, there are tremendous financial costs, and there are other costs as well. For example, the discontinuity in professional development. And when we ran our model to examine how much a teacher residency could save a district, we found that a teacher residency could save a district $1.24 million. The Seattle teacher residency is an example of this. So when you really think about the benefits and how they outweigh some of the upfront costs, increasing awareness around that is very important. In addition to sharing these kinds of stories that Dr. Bunting is sharing in Delaware and Dr. Wright is sharing in Mississippi, I think is really important for states to see the vision for how this model can transform teacher preparation.
Also, most definitely accessibility is always an issue when I was previously in education, but like I said, those who may have chose another career path, but of course they have these passions and these skills for teaching, that it's not accessible to them if going down another pathway to a four-year college. So, you know, these programs kind of give them that leverage to do what they maybe should have been doing in the first place, which is to be in a classroom teaching and bringing their own individual skills. And also because of the way, particularly NTR, National Teacher Residency, holds their recruitment process, they pull from the community in which those future teachers will be teaching. So 9 times out of 10, those individuals who will become teachers, they've already been immersed in the culture, immersed in the language. So just having that year to practice and actually be in the classroom, it creates a whole means of difference, as instead of kind of pushing towards that traditional route, maybe student teaching for a couple of months, you have the whole year to prepare and to become an effective teacher. So again, just that accessibility to those who may not even know how to get their foot in the door towards education.
Thank you for that. One question from the audience is, can the teacher residency model supplement other teaching experiences? For example, can it extend student teaching backward into coursework time or forward to extend the program of study beyond what we might think of as like the traditional student teaching time frame?
Well, our this next cohort, just to kind of give you a difference between cohorts 1 through 3 and this one, this cohort is also, we are entering, allowing residents to enter that already have a bachelor's degree, but may have a bachelor's degree in another subject area. So this is expanding then what, in terms of years of experience or years of education, I think would also be what we're hoping from this next cohort, because we've got a lot of career changers at this point. And I think this is another advantage that the teacher residency program brings, because it then shortens the amount of time that you can then use to get your degree. And I think it varies probably from university to university. I mean, Susan mentioned, Dr. Bunting mentioned that some of the professors are coming on campus to teach, and I think you're only limited by your imagination. I really believe in this program. I think if you want to enrich that in ways to bring on more coursework, or you want to try and front end load it versus back end load it, I think that is, you're working with the university. So it's going to be something that the two of you can work together to see what works best for the residents that you have at the moment.
I totally agree. And thinking out of the box is what we found that our universities are doing in this partnership. Sometimes our mentors are actually adjunct university members. They're part of the faculty temporarily. So that way, person who's involved in the program can be doing some of the coursework, but getting the day-to-day experience that's invaluable. So there's that matching too that impacts the coursework. Absolutely.
And I would love for both Dr. Grossman and Zakia to answer this question from their lenses. It's exciting to see the energy around teacher residency programs, and obviously the great outcomes that you all have described. How do we ensure quality as we continue to see an expansion? What does it look like to really think about quality, both from how we are recruiting and vetting folks? And Zakia, I'm interested from your perspective as someone who went through the program. You mentioned practice and feedback being a core part of that, but what else might you say was a hallmark of what made it a really quality experience that translated into you feeling like you were really confident in going into the classroom?
I definitely think the layers and level of the programs helped out. It starts as an introduction. Yes, what are you about to do? You are about to teach. This is what you need to teach. It gives you those skills, those tools, and then you kind of hop right into it, into the practice, into your mentor giving you feedback. So I think, and again, it is an entire school year, so that gives you those opportunities to maybe reassess and kind of come back in, reevaluate. Is this for me? Yes, it is. I will continue. If not, I will humbly step back and make room for those who are ready to be in the classroom. So again, just with the time frame and with all of the hands-on work that yourself and the mentor does, as well as your site manager. So I'm not sure how each residency works, but speaking from Nashville, Tennessee, it was sort of a hierarchy from your site manager and then your mentor teacher and then you as the resident. So there were several steps and several professionals to go through to guide you through the whole process. So in a sense, there wasn't really questions needed because they were already put into place for you to put them in the classroom and to practice.
Can I just add a comment? And I think I totally agree with that. And I think part of for me, the quality is the quality of the mentor, because I think that is huge. Who are you pairing these residents with? Because they really need to be the kind of teacher that you want replicated. And that's where I think it's so powerful that we really look to our best and brightest when we're looking for mentor teachers, because we want our residents to learn from those that are the master teachers and those who we would love to be able to clone, if you will, to have even more of those kinds of strong teachers, across our program. So to your question about quality, I honestly believe not only is it in the residents that you choose, but it's so much about the mentor that is chosen to go and pair with that resident.
Exactly. And speaking based off of Nashville and my experience in my cohort, there has been individuals in which the resident did not pair well with the mentor. And in that case, changes were made because it was no need to go through an entire year. And now we're in May with 2 ineffective teachers. So there is a moment in the program to where you can pause and make that switch and pair those residents and mentor teachers with those individuals who will push them towards their goal and become those master teachers that we need.
You mentioned layers earlier. I would add to the quality of the teacher, there has to be a determination and a dedication on the part of the leadership in the building. I'm a firm believer in the leader. The principal has to be a learning leader. So he has to be, or she has to be highly invested in this program as well, and in the connection with the higher ed. Then you usually have someone at the district level who is involved and again, has to believe in this program and advocate for the funding and be highly involved in the placement and the conversation and the evaluation of how it's going. In Delaware, districts have to apply to be a part of this, and it's an ongoing relationship. And I would add to that from the top down. You just have to believe you're going to develop a better teacher because of the residency program, and everybody needs to buy into that.
Dakari, I would just.
I'm sorry.
Oh.
I'm sorry, Dr. Grossman, go ahead.
No, go ahead, Dr. Wright, please.
No, I was just going to say, I think part of it is also the way you set up the program, kind of like what Dr. Bunting was talking about. We've got kind of like a 5-phase piece here to control for quality, getting back, to your quality question, because once you submit the application or a resident submits an application to MDE, that's prior to any kind of us screening and kind of sending it on to our university partners. Then our university partners review those transcripts to make sure what they look like before they share the applications with the partner districts. And then the partner districts have to engage in an interview process. Back to Zakia's point about making sure that there's a good match there. And then we then facilitate kind of like a matching process, kind of like medical school that accounts for not only university rankings, but the district rankings and the candidates rankings, so that we're trying to, at the end, find the best match that's possible. I'm sorry, Dr. Grossman, didn't mean to interrupt you.
Oh, no, ma'am. Thank you. I was just going to say that I think the thing that we're all talking about here that I want to be sure our listeners really understand is that the partnership between the institution of higher education and the school district is the key feature of a residency. The idea is that IHE is producing teachers that meet very specific district needs. And for example, in Mississippi, when the first residencies were built, that was a very key feature, that each IHE that was paired with a school district was meeting a very specific need. And in our model, we not only require the partnership, but we require a very authentic partnership where the partners are sharing data, where the partners are discussing needs based on those data, where IHE faculty are in the schools with residents, where the district and the IHE commit to each other to ensure that the residents that are being selected will be ready on day one to teach, where the mentors are carefully selected. So as Dr. Bunting talked about very eloquently, we're putting residents with teachers who are going to be mentors that help them really be ready on day one. So the partnership is really a key feature. Zakia also alluded to this. And is very, very, very important. If the partnership is not authentic, the residency program will not work the way it's designed to work, because it really is focused on the partnership to ensure that residents get what they need out of the experience and that mentors are supported in their work with residents.
And I think Dr. Bunting said it earlier that, you know, there is, yes, the mentor teachers, they are given a stipend to be a part of this, but in the same sense, just as residents have to interview for NTR, mentors too have to interview to see if they are fit for not only the residency program, but for that individual that they'll be paired with.
And Dr. Gerson, I wonder if you could talk a little bit more about the role of school leaders. We know that they are busy with a lot of different things and may not always have a deep understanding of what these first year teachers might need. What sort of commitment is needed from them? I know we talked a lot about the mentor teacher and the Institute of Higher Education, but what sort of commitment do we need also from the school leaders to make these residencies effective?
Yeah, very important. So a school district that has a residency has several schools that function as sites for residencies to be placed in for the type of year-long experience that Zakia has talked about. And it's very important that the principal provide the context for the resident and the mentor to be successful, because really the residence year is a year-long job interview of sorts. As I mentioned early on in the webinar, a very high percentage, nearly 90% of our residents end up getting hired in the school where they complete their residency. And so it's important that the principal be bought into this and that the principal set a tone and a climate for the resident to be successful, which starts with ensuring that the resident is paired with the right mentor. And then another very important feature of that dynamic is that the mentor is supported in that work and that the mentor has the resources that they need to provide the resident with the experience that we want every resident to have. So that's modeling high quality instructional practices. That is modeling classroom behavior management that ensures that a teacher can manage a classroom on their own. It requires a gradual release and a support around gradual release for that resident, so that resident is over time increasingly taking on more and more classroom responsibilities. It also requires feedback from the principal. So just like the principal is giving feedback to the classroom teacher, we're going to be giving feedback to the resident as well, because the resident, as Zakia has talked about, works alongside the mentor for the entire school year. So it's important that we're placing or picking as sites schools where instructional leadership is very sound, and where there is an emphasis placed on a supportive culture for teachers. And I think Zakia could probably talk a little bit more about the experience she had with the principal in her school, but those are, you know, the essential elements of what we need from a school principal for a site to be successful and nurturing for a resident.
Most definitely, Dr. Grossman. I think it would have been a very challenging experience if I did not have a supportive principal and assistant principal. Just my administration as a whole was very supportive. Although technically my mentor teacher was the one giving the feedback and kind of reporting things back to the residency, there was moments in my experience to where my principal just came in to observe me. No, it was not an official observation, but because of the culture, because of what she was hearing and seeing, she made it a point to step into the classroom, see this resident with her own eyes, and know what was to come in a couple of months when she hired me. So having that relationship and actually visibly seeing and hearing from the administration in your school as a resident played a major part in firstly keeping me at the school and in the residency program. So it is absolutely 100% needed in order for residents to be successful throughout the years, to have that consistent and continuum of support from all ends.
Thank you for that. I'm wondering, and this is another question from our audience, are you finding, is the data showing for you that you're getting candidates across all grade levels and subjects? Are there particular challenges related to shortage areas or secondary school teachers. And I remember earlier you also mentioned challenges in trying to recruit men and men of color, particularly into the classroom. Interested in what you've been seeing in the data for the residencies.
Yeah, that was really the reason with this last round of money that we were very intentional about that, because the universities that were chosen for our ESSER money are in those areas of our state that we do have critical shortage areas. And so we're using our data to really drive that kind of programming to make sure that we are not just having a proliferation, let's say, of elementary school teachers when it's math and science that we need or special education that we need. So I think that has to be part of the upfront thinking on that. And you bring up a really good point. And the other thing I want to say about the principal, just having been one for many, many years, there's no more important role than a principal can take than to support the teachers inside that building, because the research is very clear. Teachers don't leave school, don't leave teaching because of the money. They leave teaching if they don't feel they're supported. And so if you can get a high quality school-based administrator to support teachers, then they're there for the long haul. And particularly for a program like this, where you're trying to encourage those residents to come and stay in your school and in your district, it really, leadership matters, and it matters at all times.
Earlier, I mentioned that we were able to place a lot of our residents in high need schools where we have a concern about English learners, or the demographics, or we have an economic challenge, but we also need them in our critical areas, such the chemistry classrooms and some of those. So we do have a stipend. It's a little bit less than for the high need schools, but we have a $20,000 stipend for the residents who go into those high need areas, and they are specified in state code. We do have, though, a proliferation of residents that are in the elementary, and then the middle school comes next. We have fewer for the high school, and we're working on that.
Great. Can you talk a little bit about the workload for residents? What does that model look like in the classroom, and how flexible is that workload? And perhaps Ms. Boyd, we'll start with you as someone who experienced that.
So like I said in the beginning, it starts off mildly slower, just with kind of an outline of what the curriculum will entail before you step foot wholly into the classroom. So of course, at NTR, we started off doing a practice because, as much as we think that part we can kind of brush on by, you do need it to be a certificated teacher. So starting with the testing, pre-testing, all of that was done. From there, after being paired with your mentor, we go more into the basis of lesson planning. From there, you learn there. We have another whole section on building relationships. So there are moments in which you have to interview a student and build this relationship and document that. After that, we have weekly classes, again, on cultural awareness. So having those conversations and readings and lessons on scenarios of what will you do if a student comes to school and they have an unusual amount of food in their backpack, or they come in and have some sort of art on their arms because they had a cultural celebration at home. You can't say, hey, there's no tattoos allowed in this school, but if you were to build that relationship and know your student, you would know in their culture, they have this sort of celebration and holiday in which ink is placed on their arm. So that was a large part of it, is building those relationships, knowing your students. And of course, we met 2 times a week. So these classes kind of rotated from content and then your relationship, cultural practices, back to content, relationship and cultural practices, and that built on and built on. So as those gradual releases came, you were able to incorporate them into your lesson plans and practice them right in front of the students. And from there, once that was done, you would go back, get your feedback, what you need to do, what you did great, so glows and grows, and you continue to practice from there. So it was weekly classes. They just kind of rotated and alternated on what we were learning, particularly for that week.
Thank you. That's really helpful. Another strategy for growing the next generation of the teaching profession is obviously to get students interested in the teaching profession. And I'm wondering how you all think about that. Like, what strategies might help get young people interested in teaching? And is there a role that teacher residencies can play in contributing to getting young people interested in the profession?
That's a great question.
I'm sorry.
No, we keep doing that.
No, go ahead, Dr. Gresham. You go first.
I'm just going to say something really quickly, which is that a lot of places are thinking about doing that, how to essentially reach back into the high school and recruit students to enter a preparation program that is residency based. This is a really good strategy for rural areas that have specific challenges around recruiting people to work there, because you're tapping a population of people who are already invested and tied to a particular area. So you don't have to get them to move there, and they're likely to stay. So we have been working with some school districts that are interested in taking this approach. Another approach, Dakari, that is becoming increasingly popular is tapping into the paraprofessional pool in a school district. So Elizabeth City State University, which has a residency program with the Elizabeth City Pasquotate Public Schools in North Carolina, is taking this approach where they are tapping their paraprofessional population to prepare them. A lot of those candidates have some college credits, so they are able to enter the program and transfer some credits in. And the school district doesn't have to recruit those people to come live in Elizabeth City. They're already there. And in many instances have been there for many, many, many years. So their roots in that community are deep. Dr. Wright?
Thanks. So the one thing that we did, we had a huge Teach MS campaign, and we literally set up a website. It's up and running as we speak, and it targeted high school students, college students, and career changers. And it's a step 1, step 2, step 3. You want to be a teacher in Mississippi? Here's the website to go to. Here's how to get it done. And while we were doing that, we were expanding our teacher academies in our high schools. And we now have teacher academies in over 50% of our districts in our high schools. And so part of that was to do it together. It was a huge campaign about teaching and what a great job it was. And we interviewed teachers, and we had teachers tell their stories, to other teachers, and that's on our website. And so it was just a way to get the positive pieces rolling across the state about what a great job, that teaching is, and here's what we can do. And if you're thinking about changing a career, go to this website. We'll take care of it. We've also hired recruiters to go out to our schools and run fairs at our schools so that our students are aware of what's going on. So we've tried to do a multi-pronged approach to getting more people interested, and even knowing that this even exists in Mississippi.
Carrie, we did a lot of the same things, but we had one district that actually recognized at a school board meeting 4 of its outstanding Teacher Academy participants and gave a full scholarship to one of them and promised them a job as soon as they finished their education. And in the meantime, after a certain number of credits, all 4 of these students are able to come back and work as substitutes. So they captured 4 people right there. Both financially and with promises of jobs. And I think that caps their career. These are high schoolers that are going to come back and teach in their community. And that's what we need to be doing more of.
Absolutely. And amazingly, this hour has flown by, and I feel like we can all talk about this all day. But I would like to thank our amazing panelists and turn it back over to Jessica from the Hunt Institute to wrap us.
I was going to say the same thing, Dakari. This is like the fastest hour of my day. So for a great conversation. Thank you all so much. Thank you, Dakari, and many thanks to our panelists for a wonderful discussion today. Thanks also to the National Center for Teacher Residencies for partnering with us for today's webinar and answering all of the excellent questions in the chat. I know teacher recruitment, retention, and diversity issues are really top of mind for us at the Hunt Institute, especially as we look forward into 2022. So I hope that you all leave with a better understanding of teacher residencies and how states can use this model to really improve their educator workforce. And so we also hope those of you attending today will join us for our other upcoming webinars that you see on the screen. We pretty much have one every single week. So we'll post a link to our upcoming webinars page in the chat feature. So please go ahead and register for the topics that interest you. And yeah, once again, thank you so much for your time and enjoy the rest of your day.